I had your wrong address the other day. I was emailing you from my iPad, so I didn't.
I mean, the bleeding.
I didn't have your updated email address on my iPad. That's why I sent you the old.
Seen only of her. She's been wanting me to go down.
Does Cindy get one?
Picture.
Oh, Cliff. We'll give that to Cliff.
Pardon me?
We'll help the egg
Okay.
people. Get the address.
Okay, as soon as the cable is ready,
Okay.
I can look up Mel's house.
you can.
Everybody knows
Egg
where
'em.
Mel lives. I do drive-bys all the
How you
time.
do?
Carl, if you put that on, it's too loud.
Well, he said he's having a problem with audio tonight, so it doesn't matter.
No, wait. Can we? There's no audio.
You can just go like that.
No, there's audio. It's just that there's a problem with the heating modulator, so there's a little buzz that comes in every now and then.
Oh.
depending on the audio.
So we should speak loud then, right? Loudly.
Enunciate, Mel Webster.
Now I could sit here and go. Blah, 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 blah,
It's
blah,
gonna be
blah.
a problem for me because I don't talk loudly. So
You need to talk louder. I know. When I watch the meetings, you can't hear you.
Oh.
I've known that for a long time, but I didn't say anything.
why?
It's a wise ass.
Well, there are other things you say that are inappropriate.
I
Did you
know. Why didn't say
them
that?
Okay.
What's wrong with you? All right, you all set?
Moving on in a professional
Okay.
manner.
Call the meeting of the North Reading School Committee to order. This is our last, well, not really our last summer meeting, but our last prior to school opening meeting. At this time, if there's anybody who would like to be heard for public input, please let us know. Okay? Oh, okay. If you want, this is the time for public input if you have questions, so.
For any of the things on the agenda?
Actually, if it's an item on the agenda, we'll just call on you during that item. Okay, thanks. All right, and next we're going to move the agenda around a little bit, and the first item of business tonight is a new high school club proposal. So whoever is going to be presenting that, if you could please come up to the table, and that'd be great.
Good evening, everyone.
Hey, John.
Thank you for having us, and I'd like to introduce to you one of the students at the high school. Nick Phillips will soon be a sophomore at the high school, and I'm going to let Nick walk you through a PowerPoint presentation that he's made for a new club proposal that we're hoping to see your endorsement of this evening. Just before I turn it over to Nick, just by way of introduction, I think I'd like to acknowledge the work that he has done over the last few months. Nick first came to me in the spring of the last school year with an idea for the American Red Cross Club, and I think I told Nick at the time, in 25 years in public education, I never knew that there was an American Red Cross Club in public high schools. And lo and behold, not only are they in high schools, but they're in some colleges and universities in the area too. So I truly got an education from Nick over the last few months, where he did an extensive amount of work to pull together the proposal that he's going to walk you through tonight. And I think it's important to acknowledge that, particularly of Nick's age, at the time he was a freshman student, as I said, soon to be a sophomore, just a very, very mature, thoughtful, and bright young man. And you may remember Nick. I brought him to the school committee meeting in January. He was one of the three students that spoke to you when the meeting was held at the high school about the SPLASH program that he attended at MIT. So I think we've had some very nice work out of Nick in just a very short period of time. I'm very, very hopeful for his future. He really does represent the best and brightest. I hate to be trite, but he really does. I'm very, very impressed with his work. So he has done an extensive amount of work on researching this club, putting together the PowerPoint for you, recruiting some student interest last spring, recruiting a faculty advisor. But I'll let him speak to you in more detail about all of that, okay? You ready?
Right. Thank you, Mr. Ryan.
You're welcome.
First of all, I'd like to thank you all for giving me the time to give my presentation. And I'll start out with some brief history on the Red Cross Club. It was originally founded in 1881, and it had a small focus compared to what it has today, such as first aid, water safety, and public nursing programs. But you'll see that the current focus has evolved, and it has expanded its focus over many years. It's been a very good organization, and it carries out one of the most the things that really help the world today, and they do a very good job of what they do. And just a fact, the first club was started at a college in Harvard, and then in 2001, the first high school club was started in Boston Latin Academy. And feel free to interrupt me during the interpretation if you have any questions. So next I'd like to focus on the structure of the Red Cross organization. We have just a brief overview of the national structure, but more importantly would be the structure here at the high school. So as starting the club, I would be the founder and the president of the club, but there are also other board positions in the club, which we would have an election at the beginning of the year in one of the primary meetings, in which the student members would be elected into the board of the club. And in a later slide, I've included some of the positions and what their duties entail. And the liaison to the club would be the Community and Schools Program Specialist, Ms. Shauna Diaz, and she would guide us through the process of starting this club, and she would help us coordinate our events with the Red Cross and help us get started and become a very good club. And of course, my school advisor, which we would need to have for the club, which would be Ms. Brown, and she's given her full dedication to the club, and she's on board with starting the club. As you can see, there are many, many Red Cross clubs, but they're not only included on high schools. There are also many college-level clubs, and there are plenty of these very good universities that have these clubs, which shows that it's a very prestigious organization, and it's renowned worldwide for the work it does. And these are some of the towns that are near us that have clubs, and I just think that list would look a lot better with North Reading High School on it. So the Red Cross, we would establish a North Reading High School chapter mission in which the students would work together with the Red Cross unit, which would be the American Red Cross of Eastern Massachusetts, and we would work with them to coordinate events and participate in Red Cross service projects that impact the community and the world. And that's what I think one of the very great things of the Red Cross is, because there's so many levels of impact that each event requires. The students can choose how to make an impact on their community and how to take action on so many different levels that can help their school or their town, and then it can also help the nation and the world throughout the various events that they do. And it's a very great opportunity for all the students, and it's a chance for self-development, and it really shows how to take the tasks and sort of take charge yourself and make a difference in your community and take action. And that's what I think one of the great perks of starting the club would be for the student development. And we would work with the local Red Cross unit and our school, and we would carry out these many events that would help, not only help the community and the world we live in, but it would also, in turn, be a wonderful experience for the students that take part in this club. So some of the many effects that this club would have on the North Reading community would be it promotes unity, support, and pride, and it helps raise awareness. And I think that's a very important part, because in the current world, there's always a need for blood, and there's all these problems that need to be addressed. And I think that starting this club would be a great way to address some of these problems and help raise awareness in our community to help address these problems. And it really shows an example of how to take self-leadership, and that's another one of the very great things that helps the students develop, and that quality is necessary in life for students, and that's why I think it's a very great opportunity to help build my peers and increase their self-development. So the Red Cross of Eastern Massachusetts requires us to do at least 4 events per year. So at the beginning of the year, they'll issue a calendar that has each month of the school year, and actually in the summer too. And at the beginning of the year, they'll issue this calendar. And through the Community and Schools Program Specialist, we will be able to coordinate events, and we will be able to pick the events that we want to take part in. And that's what I think another great thing about the club is the students at the beginning of the year, will elect which events we want to pick. And the students will actually get to decide which way they want to improve their community and how they want to do it. And up on that slide, I have just some of the many ways that Red Cross works to improve the world and the community. And those are just some of the things that the Red Cross works to do. These are some of the specialty programs that the Red Cross has, and these are just some of the areas that the Red Cross covers and what they do. And when we would do this at the club, we would pick 4 events, and they would most likely be from different categories of this. So say we would have probably 1 month we would do a blood drive, or we would do a food pantry, or something like that, or we would sell pins to help the Federal Emergency Management Association, and all of the work we would do would be in different areas, and so it's all really helping the Red Cross carry out what they do. Up here I have listed some of the board members and their responsibilities. And like I said, in the primary meetings, we would probably delegate these tasks to the student members and have an election. And we would try to get the community school program specialist to come out during the initial meeting and have her sort of explain and walk through the orientation for the members and help them discover what this club will do for them. So as my goal for back to school, I would like to first establish the club and establish the meeting place, time, and frequency. So how often the club meets and what room we would be meeting in. And that's important for not only the students, but also for my teacher and advisor, Miss Brown. She also does other school clubs. And we would also advertise the Red Cross Club. Mr. Bernard and I had spoke about putting a banner on the website for the Red Cross Club. And we would also put posters in the school and just increase awareness about the club, so the members would be more encouraged to take participation in it. And I'd also like to announce the initial meeting, and like I said, I tried to get the program specialist to come out for that initial meeting and help guide the students in the process of, because this is the first time this club's appeared at the high school, so we're all new to it, and that's why it's important for the specialist to come in and show us. Yes.
Quick question. How did you learn about this club?
My cousin, who attended Reading Memorial High School, she actually was a member of this club, and one day she had brought it up in a conversation, and I just thought, what a wonderful thing this is. She explained all the amazing things they were doing at their school, how it improved their school, how all the students had a wonderful time, and it was just a wonderful experience for all the students, and I thought, this would be a great thing to have in North Reading High School. I should be able to start this at high school. And at the beginning of the year, we would vote on the projects that we would plan to take part in and let the students really pick out and ease into it because it's new for everyone. So I'd just like to establish that in the first part of the club. Is there any questions?
Does the board have any questions?
I don't have any questions other than comments.
Comments? Go ahead.
I just think this is fantastic. I'm an epidemiologist, so I really love I love the idea of participating in something that promotes awareness of so many public health causes and also awareness of professions that are related to them.
Exactly.
I like that it has a combination of
Talking to the microphone.
Yeah, that's right. We never hear
microphone isn't working, and I'm not usually loud. There's a big light in my face. Sorry.
you. Kyle can shut that off.
I think it's really amazing that you pulled all of this together and are really just promoting it. I'm just very impressed that you went this far. You have an implementation plan for the first couple of months, which is better than most people who are working for me in real life. So I really commend you for taking this on and for bringing it to North Reading. I would like to hear about what you're doing. I know that a lot of us are very interested in hearing, how things go, especially when we have new clubs. I think you said that there's some interest already. Do you have sort of numbers of people who?
There is. I have a member list of. It's not a formal list, but it's just people that express interest in the club and that they wanted to take part in it and they wanted to really get this started. So that was my goal for it. I tried to get this in before school so you can get it started and start doing all the events.
Great. Well, if you ever need help, let me know, because I really love this idea.
If I could just add, this is Eric, to your point, Nick and I, when we last met, which was last week, in preparing for tonight, we talked about Nick coming back to a school committee meeting.
Great.
In the wintertime, I think you're going to be on the road again this year when the meeting comes to the high school. We thought maybe we'd have Nick give you kind of a little report of progress.
That would be wonderful.
What the club had done.
Okay. Sounds good. Perfect.
Right.
Any other questions? Sounds like a great idea to me. And I commend you for the effort that you put into all the work that you did to put this together. Can I have a motion to accept the new, I guess it would be a 2-year pilot for the new American, is it the American Red Cross Club
It's the
at the,
American Red Cross chapter at Untitled Chapter.
okay. What he said, a motion for that?
So moved.
Second.
Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous. Thanks.
Good luck.
Thank you, Nick. Nice job.
Okay, continue,
PowerPoint.
Oh, wonderful. I'm so thrilled.
Thank you.
continuing with, thanks, Nick.
Thank you.
Continue with going out of order here. We have Patrick Daly here, and Patrick is going to give us an update on the Massachusetts School and District Accountability and Assistance System.
Good.
I'm sure Patrick
Look
is
at the
going to
smile
tell
on his
us what
face.
that
This
is,
is great.
because at this point, I'm not completely sure. Have you? Yeah, you called me about it last week. So as soon as we get set up here.
This is all much hotter.
Anything that you were going to say to start?
Yes, there is. Thank you. So as you know, in February of last year, Massachusetts was granted a waiver from certain NCLB requirements. And the Commonwealth of Massachusetts assessed schools and districts based on their 5-level framework for district accountability and assistance. And in addition, the federal government assessed schools and districts under No Child Left Behind, better known as also conducting adequate yearly progress reporting. So the NCLB goal was of 100% of students reaching proficiency by 2013-2014. And that has been replaced by a new recommendation by the state of a goal of reducing proficiency gaps by half by the end of the 2016-17 school year. So instead of adequate yearly progress reporting, Massachusetts is going to be reporting school and district progress toward college and career readiness and reducing the proficiency gap through the use of this new 100-point Progress and Performance Index, also known as the PPI. So this presentation tonight will provide an overview for the school committee. And then when results are released of the 2012 MCAS and the new accountability data, Patrick will be back to share information that's very specific to North Reading. And I'll share that schedule with you later on under administrative report. So I'm going to turn it over to Patrick, and he's going to give you a quick overview.
Thank you, folks. Good to see everyone. There's going to be a lot of new acronyms tonight, and again, what we're doing here is part of just an overview to get this into our head. In some ways, you're going to hear a lot more PPI, CPI, and a lot less AYP, but there's a lot more to it. I hope you get a little window into seeing why this is actually, I believe, and I think our administrative council believes, a really positive step forward. I will say this is a Department of Education presentation that the superintendent, myself, and Patty Bullard attended in April. We're getting a lot of nice materials from the Department of Education. There's a real shift there to their view of trying to be more, less of a regulatory body and more of an assistance, providing professional development, supporting us with documents to help us out. So we were able to take these slides and adapt them for the presentation. We've given a similar presentation to our administrators, and we intend to continue this with our teachers. And this is really all part of the first step of our program, is to share the information. So some of the questions that may come up that this should address tonight: how will the Elementary and Secondary Education Department measure school and district progress and performance for next year? How will the flexibility plan impact our district or school accountability status? And will we have to implement SES or school choice? And I will explain a little bit what that is in a few minutes. You may remember that from our presentation in the past, but I will explain that in a moment. So why we're here. We are talking about a shift from the old accountability system of, you may remember terms like corrective action, improvement. This is a new system now that we're moving away from No Child Left Behind. And it's going to be simplified. For many years, Massachusetts was doing two. There were two systems of classification. They were using a leveled system as well as this national No Child Left Behind system of schools. And this really will offer us a lot more flexibility in measuring what we're actually doing. If we talk about the major changes here of No Child Left Behind, there was a goal of 100% proficiency. And as we know, that was a one-size-fits-all, a very high standard, but somewhat difficult to achieve for a lot of schools, and wasn't the best measurement. And so it's not just Massachusetts, but many schools applied for waivers from this. So the new goal now is to replace proficiency gaps by half by 2017. And we'll speak to that a little bit more detail in a few moments. The original labels are eliminated, so things like AYP, that term, corrective action, schools in need of improvement, that language is gone. We have applied for a waiver from that, so we won't be using that language anymore to describe schools in Massachusetts. There are some new performance measures that incorporate both student growth and some other indicators. So we've been prepared in Massachusetts for the last few years, informing parents and everyone about student growth performance. And these new pieces are now being rolled into the system that we're going to be using. There is an enhanced focus on subgroups, including a new high needs group, and I'll address a little bit more detail in a few slides about how that might change some of the data that we see. It's changed some reporting for districts throughout the state. And I will talk about SES and choice requirements, and they've been replaced by new supports and interventions. So I'll speak to that in one moment. So No Child Left Behind, again, required 100% proficiency, used adequate yearly progress, talked about corrective action, restructuring, improvement. It required certain things. When we think of our Title I grant that we receive every year, we had to do a 20% reservation for school choice and supplemental education services. That's the SES. And what that actually required is that we put aside money from our Title I grant to have students be tutored by outside agencies who weren't necessarily up to the standards even of our highly qualified teachers. They weren't necessarily up to the standards of North Reading. We also had to make a 10% reservation for professional development. I feel like I missed the slide here. This slide shows you the framework for what we're looking at now under the new system. So most of the districts are at the top in the green, should be level 1 and level 2. And based on our past data in this district, I would hope that we would be in that level as well. Again, we don't have our data currently yet to discuss, but we're optimistic that we'd be in the green. Some districts would be in that third level, and then a few would be in the bottom level. And really, what we're going to see as we look at another slide in a few moments, there's really more of a hands-off approach, letting us have more autonomy with our decisions and with our governance of the students in the schools at those top levels, and allowing the state to really focus on those districts that are most in need at the bottom. So the waiver requirements, what were they? The connection between the Common Core and the Ed evaluation and the data decision making, which we're focusing on in our district. I wanted to speak to that for a moment because we're trying to, as a district, focus on the interrelationships between all of these pieces. We're setting ambitious goals, just like we always have in Massachusetts, but yet now they're attainable. So we still have that same high standard, but it's a little bit more reasonable and attainable. We have a new system for recognition, so again, focusing on growth in these subgroups. We have our college and career ready standards and assessments. So this was a piece of, in order to qualify for the waiver, we need to accept the new college and career, what you've heard referred to as the Common Core state standards. And we need to implement the educator evaluator system, which you've heard a lot about as well, we've been working on here. And also to reduce duplication and burden. And again, that applies to 2 sets of accountability systems in our district. So again, all of these aspects of the waiver requirements we're working on throughout the year in different pieces. The educator evaluation, using data from assessments, both local and MCAS, and also this new accountability system, all of this working together, and they're all interrelated. So why are we seeking flexibility? We want to unify our accountability system, bring together the new federal requirements, and better differentiate between schools. We're able to dig down a little bit more with this data. We're going to maintain Massachusetts' high track record. Like I said, we've had a great record. We're really in the driver's seat in a lot of ways in these national conversations, and we're able to continue that under this waiver. Incentivize improvement at all the schools, and identify schools that need the most assistance in the aggregate and for student subgroups, and recognize high achieving and improving schools in our state. And we're going to incorporate the growth into our accountability determination. So that's something we've been, like I said, preparing for, and now we're going to actually use these growth measurements in our determinations. So here's our revised goals.
These are the state goals.
Mm-hmm.
Right. We're going to reduce the proficiency gap by half by 2016-17. It's an ambitious but achievable goal that we are working towards, working for our students who are furthest behind. An increased focus on ELA math, and we've added science to this as well. So that's an important distinction there. We focused before just on ELA and math, but we're also going to be looking at science scores. Everyone has the same goal, but we have more differentiated targets, and this is going to apply to all states, districts, and schools and groups. So again, under No Child Left Behind, we had a target of 100 by 2014. And everyone had a goal based on that, and this is what adequate yearly progress was measuring. Our progress towards 100%, that means every single student in the district is at 100%. Under the new system, we have a new target of increasing our proficiency gap by half by 2016-17. So very quickly, I'll just explain what this slide represents. Very quickly, the math is, if you look at the one on top there, if you take a CPI of 76, so a CPI again would be each year you're going to get a performance index. This CPI would be 4 years of performance index. You would look at that as a 76. You would take the 76 out of 100 and you'd come up with 24. That's the difference. You divide that in half, that's the half mark, and that's 12. And so if you add the 12 back to the 76, that gives you your goal for 2016 of 88, which then sets up your yearly goals, as you can see there, 2 points per year, 76, 78, 80, 82. The bottom one is a similar equation based on a different CPI of 67.4. So when we do have our data, our trajectory and our goals are laid out for us realistically, as opposed to trying to set everything up for trying to reach perfection in 100. We have a realistic goal for each of our schools, and it's going to be very different throughout the state. So these goals are going to be much more well-fitted to our schools instead of that one-size-fits-all method that we were working under before. So the ESE will report Progress and Performance Index, which is called PPI. Again, we're going to have an annual PPI, which will measure the school progress, and then there will be the 4-year PPI, which is comprehensive. That's the CPI, which I've referred to. There's more weight given to the recent year, so 40% to the most current year, then 30, then 20, then 10, which will account for improvement and better statistics in that way. It's reported at the state, district, and subgroup level. And schools and districts will be grouped into levels from 1 to 5. Now, PPI measures the participation on MCAS, progress on CPI gap closing in ELA math and science, as I mentioned, growth in ELA and math, improved performance at the advanced, warning, and failing levels. So this is a great place for us to show some improvement, actually, in this district, because there's actually some points to move students from proficient into advanced. So for achievement, for a district that's already very good, that's a chance for us to get great and actually get what's called bonus points. We're not going to get into that tonight, but there's an opportunity for that. High school, in addition to into these categories, high schools will also be measured for their graduation and their annual dropout rates. So which student groups are included? There is a aggregate all students group with a minimum of 20. There's also now what's called a high needs students, which includes low income students, special education students, and former or current English language learner students with a minimum of 30. Now in the past this was a different setup of a group and there had to be a minimum of 40. So that's one of the things we're going to see some differences now because the bar is no longer 40, and because these students are combined into one group, we may see some reporting that's going to look a little different than it has in the past. But another thing that this does is it doesn't double count students. In the past, if a student was both low income and English language learner, they may have counted twice. Now this new group is one group and students are only going to be counted singly, and it should be more effective and more accurate. So that was something we applied for in our waiver. So again, the high needs subgroup, the multiple counting, which I just mentioned, that new designation though will hold over 300 additional schools accountable for subgroups that may not have shown up before. So this may indicate some differences in our data when we look at it. You might see schools with some data that looks a little bit different in the past, and this is a probable cause of that this new accountability here. And most of our schools will be based in the levels based upon the students in that high needs group. And I think you're going to see that in our scores when we do see them, that you'll see the aggregate score, and then you'll also see that high needs group. If that high needs group does not meet the target, then the whole school is accountable for that. And that's something that we'll be looking at in a few weeks. All right. The classifying schools, I mentioned this before. If you see on the side there where it says ESE engagement, if you're a level 1 or a level 2 district, which again, I believe that we will be there based on our past records, you're going to see very low to low ESE engagement, meaning we're going to have a little bit more discretion with how we spend some of our state funding and our federal funding as far as the grants and as far as them needing to come into our schools to really dictate how we run some programs. They're going to give us a lot of autonomy in those decisions, which is great. So then they, again, can concentrate on the level 3, 4, and 5 schools. There's a lot of great resources that are out there. There are the DSACs, which are a branch of the Department of Education, and they help the lower performing schools by providing workshops and information. We still can benefit from getting some of that information, but we're not going to get the direct interventions that some of these lower performing districts get. And again, because we're performing high, we're giving some autonomy there. Some information here, when we do classify, the charter schools now will be assigned levels. Districts will be classified based on their lowest performing school. So for example, if we were to have one school in our district that was a 2, we would be a level 2 district. If we had a 3, we would be a level 3. So
That's ridiculous.
Classified as low as your lowest.
That's ridiculous.
Is this
I guess the typical state program. You have 20 schools in your district, and 19 are 1, and one of them is a 4. You're a 4 district. That makes sense. Sorry, Patrick. I just had to vent.
I think it's that you're as strong as your weakest. But that's the thinking there, and that is how it is. Now the exception would be for level 4 and 5 districts, and these are really based upon board action. You've heard about schools being taken over, and that's really a different situation. Right. And again, this should be some better alignment between the levels and the district accountability determinations for special education. And I left this up here just to start a conversation. I know this is difficult to read, but as I mentioned earlier, the state is doing a good job of providing us with a lot of tools to share. You've heard about the DART tool, which is a tool that helps us relate to some districts that are similar to ours in size and demographics and scores. And these are tools that we're using widely throughout the district and to compare apples to apples with districts that are similar. On this same page, there's all sorts of information, including these PowerPoints, which I'm sharing with you today. So this is just a great resource for a learning tool for school committee, for administrators, for teachers, and we're going to continue to share these resources in the future.
Patrick, I'm just going to make a connection. Last spring, I made a presentation to the committee to show you, to demonstrate how you can go in and make those comparisons between similar communities. So we'll continue to do that as we move through the school year and as we get this new accountability and assistance data. Thanks.
Excellent. So the question about what comes next, in the summer, early fall of 2002, the waiver will take effect, beginning with this school year. The Department of Ed will review and approve our Title I and Title IIA grant applications. They may request additional evidence. Our grants have been approved so far, so that's great. As I mentioned earlier with that school choice, we did apply for a waiver from that SES, so we're going to use our funds in Title I to provide tutoring and direct services within our district with our highly qualified teachers. So the middle school was a school that was offering that SES, and they have released a letter to the parents letting them know that we're going to use that money within our district to provide services to our highest needs students. And I think that's a great step forward to using our resources with the great staff that we have here already. And the ESE will release official PPI data and levels for all districts based on 2009, 10, 11, and 12. I just checked before I came down here. The 12 should be out, and it's not out yet. So that'll be coming out very soon. But the administrators are working with some preliminary data. They're starting to look at, and figure out some of the calculations. We've been provided with some calculators in Excel, and we're figuring out some of the data and looking at our goals and looking at our trajectories. We've been doing that already, and once we have that final data, we'll have some more definitive information. And again, as the superintendent mentioned, we'll be sharing that here with you as well in the coming months. Any questions?
Other than that ridiculous way of classifying districts, and I would not back down from that because that makes absolutely no sense to me. I think this is far more realistic than No Child Left Behind. I think to expect all districts to have 100% of their students at a certain level when you know that there are certain students, be it the high needs group that you mentioned up there or just other students, I think was unrealistic. I hope the goals that Massachusetts has set are difficult enough to reach. I hope they're not easy goals. I know that we're always near the top of in terms of states in the country for public education. So I'm assuming that we set high standards and high goals to meet. But I think this makes tremendous sense.
As we look at our goal setting and educator evaluation, one of the terms that comes up is exhaustive. It can't be exhaustive. And I think when you saw 100%, if you're trying to set a school improvement goal, or if you're trying to even set a teacher goal to 100% to perfection, that's so difficult to measure. And I think with these numbers and these targets that are attainable, I think it's going to really help drive our district goals, our school goals, and when educators are setting their own goals. That's that other piece that I was saying. This accountability, bringing in with our goal setting, that's a part of our evaluation, is going to be a wonderful synergy. I think we're going to see. That's our goal here as we spread this information.
Any other comments or questions?
I just had one question. I know this represents a change in the reporting requirements. What is the burden on our current staff? Do we have sufficient staff to manage the reporting of this? What's the training involved in?
Well, it is going to take some additional training and some of the professional development time that you have included in the school calendar will allow us to inform our faculty.
Right.
The whole training up of our administrators in the shift in thinking from the old accountability system to the new accountability system, and the mathematics that you just got a little surface presentation on, has been a bit challenging. And until we have our own official data to manipulate and to go into data warehouse and disaggregate to give us a better sense of how our students are performing, it's all an exercise at this particular time. So in order for me to really answer your question, we really need that official data, and then spend the man and women hours in disaggregating it and getting a better sense as to how usable is it going to be for us as we continue to move toward really decreasing that proficiency gap.
Great, thank you.
We've identified, I believe, October 5th right now, part of the day is to start really looking at this at the building level, and having conversations like, presentations like this and conversations, questions, because that's really the first step, is just gaining an understanding of how this will impact. And I think most teachers and educators are going to be excited about the release, the waiver from No Child Left Behind. I think people will see that as a real positive step forward.
Patrick, one favor. Could either you or the superintendent email the committee copies of the presentation? Absolutely. That'd be great. And so you'll be back at some point to give us an update in terms of how we're performing. Will that be during this school year, or will it be at the end of this school year?
It will be, I would think, in a few months. As soon as that data is released from embargo, we're able to go forward.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
End of October, beginning of November. That's correct.
Data's embargoed. Awesome.
Mm-hmm.
At this point.
That's great.
And if you want to make known my disgust with the way they're going to classify districts, you're free to do that.
You know, it reminds me of Homeland Security. Except there's no orange. I think I'm a little.
There's
thrown
no,
off by
right,
it.
there's no orange ring. Thanks, Patrick.
Thank you, Patrick.
Okay, getting back to the agenda, we have, under continued business, we have an update on the secondary school building project. Superintendent Willis.
Yes. The last secondary school building committee meeting took place on Tuesday, August 14th. And at that time, the focus of the meeting was to engage the secondary school building committee in a value engineering process that is part of the design development phase of the building project. During this process, representatives from PMA, from Doran Whittier and Gilbane worked together with the secondary school building committee to make timely decisions about materials and resources. So once the design documents are complete, the renderings of the new schools will be updated to include all of these details, and those pictures will be shared with the public. And we're hoping that that will take place before the end of this calendar year. But it has been quite a process and will continue to be a process. We'll be, again, continuing at our next secondary school building committee with that same conversation around value engineering.
And just so the community's clear, we're not talking about finished materials at this time. We're talking about the core construction.
That's correct.
Materials, correct?
That is correct. Thank
Okay.
you for making that distinction. The project continues to be on schedule with the completion of the modular classroom relocation at the middle school that took place this summer. I can say that we were very close to this project. It was exciting watching it take place. The transformation at the middle school has been amazing, particularly with the new parking lot, the pickup and drop-off area. As a matter of fact, a copy of the traffic plan has been included in your packet. It has been sent to the transcript, along with the narrative. I believe it's also been sent to patch.com. It will be posted to the website. I know there's an open house here on Thursday night at the middle school, and it will be shared at that time. I'm also happy to report to you that today we received our occupancy permit for the modulars. So we're good to go. Teachers have been moving all of their materials back into the classrooms. We did have a moving company that moved the majority of the materials that were stored in the gym back into the modular classrooms. Today, Carl and I toured the modulars to take a look at all of the work that's been done. And at this time, I'd really like to commend our custodians for completing the finishing work in the modulars. I believe today we were told that they cleaned those 10 modulars and put the finishing touches on them within 30 hours. So it was really a Herculean task, and I'd like to commend them for the work that they did in order for the teachers to be able to move in this particular week. The next meeting of the SSBC is scheduled for Tuesday, August 28th. That's tomorrow. The time is 7 p.m. as opposed to 6:30, so we're starting a half hour later, and it is always open to the public.
And we're still on for hopefully for a groundbreaking in the October-November timeframe.
Yes, once we did not have a pre-construction meeting this past week, so I wasn't able to ascertain what some of the details would be around that. But yes, we are going to have an official ceremony for groundbreaking early this fall.
Okay. Any other questions or comments on the new building? Yes, ma'am. If you could come up to the table, just state your name and address, and glad to entertain your questions. Thanks.
My name's Mary Carey. I live at 10 School Hill Lane, which is just directly behind where they're doing all the construction. I agree. You know, it's unbelievable the changes that have gone on. You know, my daughter's going to reap the benefit. She's going into 4th grade. I'm here really for a kind of a selfish reason. Where our property is that they call it the pinch point, where there's limited woods. And I'm just wondering, number one, if at some point, and this is when it's full summer, that, you know, I sit out in my backyard and it feels like I live in a loading dock, and, you know, the noise we can deal with, it's part of the construction process, but it's the view. The other houses along School Hill Lane are pretty wooded, so I think my situation is a little bit different from the other people. You feel free to come through my backyard and, you know, and look, because you can see really directly, we're in the line of sight of all the construction that's going on. And I'm wondering at some point when the fall comes, and, you know, if there's some sort of screening that could be put up just for, you know, quality of life, I guess, issues.
Well, Mr. Venezia is one of our representatives on the SSBC, which meets tomorrow night. Jerry, I don't know, would it make
most
sense for her
certainly.
to attend that meeting tomorrow night, or?
I don't know that she needs to attend, and you know, I'm not sure what the agenda is tomorrow.
Okay.
But we could certainly bring it to their attention.
Yeah, I mean, I know that
You
the
think a
fence-
screening of some kind would,
The fence is up, but even
Yeah.
if they put slats, I mean, if you just come to where
how high is the fence right there?
It looks to be about 6 feet, is
6
my
feet.
guess.
So you're just looking for, so it's just a chain link fence, there's no,
It's just a chain link fence,
Okay.
right, and you know, where we are, it's, you know, we do have some trees, but basically, you know, when I sit out at night, when I come home from work, I'm looking at all this construction equipment, and there's lockers, and there's storage containers.
If you put slats in though, is it high enough? Is the fence high enough, or does it have to be higher?
Will be tolerable, I think. You know, I'm not asking for any, you know, major, because at the end, you know, they said that they're gonna do some tree work and put a fence up and,
Yeah.
you know, make it nice, so we don't feel like we're living in a parking lot.
Yeah.
My other, question is really about the tennis courts, because where we live is gonna be pretty much the line where the tennis area is supposed to be, which will be actually nice if there's not a lot of screening to actually look out on, and that's fine, rather than being in the parking lot section. But we've noticed that the tennis courts are still there, and I didn't know whether it was a timing issue. if
Yeah.
that stays
It's
too.
timing.
those are gonna be moved.
Well, there's been some issues as to whether or not we would try to leave the tennis courts where they are, but I think the conclusion of the committee is that we can't.
Right.
And so that, the plan to move the tennis courts down the other end, that's still in effect.
Okay, so that's
Yeah.
good, that, you know, that, and, the last thing I have is, I had read in the paper about the softball fields. My daughter plays softball for the North Reading, you know, Youth League, and, you know, we were all excited when this vote took place because of, you know, I mentioned Title IX because the equal and fair access for the girls, and, you know, up until now, they've had to somehow find their way across Concord Street to the little school, and they've had to use, you know, the portable bathrooms while the boys enjoy, you know, coming out of school, playing their game, going to the locker room, using real bathrooms. And now that seems to be in jeopardy, and I was just wondering if there was an update on that.
I was a real advocate for the softball complex over there, but interestingly enough, when we started using the back of the middle school as a construction site, we lost the baseball field back there that was available to, you know, freshmen and even junior varsity players. So that we took essentially a baseball field offline. So there was a feeling and a consensus, not only amongst members of the secondary school building committee, but by the administration, school administration, that we might want to replace that baseball field with a baseball field of similar size on the new site where the high school currently sits. We didn't do that without doing due diligence, and the administration did a great job of bringing together the baseball coach, the varsity softball coach, the athletic director, and the principal. And the consensus unanimously amongst them, including the varsity softball coach who's been here for 26 years, was that they would prefer to stay at the little school complex. And there's some reasons for that, because you know from being down there, it's there are 3 fields there.
Right,
So,
I
so the
understand
freshman
that.
team, the JV team, the varsity team, not only can they all practice at the same time down there, but they can play games at the same time down there. Whereas if they used that field at the high school that we had originally proposed, you would have been limited to just the varsity playing and practicing there.
Well, you know, as a parent, you know, I think a lot of the parents whose girls do play softball and are coming up in the ranks feel very differently. The little school, you know, there's gonna be construction going on too there. Apparently it's about $2 million worth for a wall. The parking is terrible. Trying to get your daughter over there after school, there's no shuttle buses to take them over there. They somehow have to find their own way over for practices. It's not fair. It's
Well,
not fair to the girls.
I went through the whole softball experience, and I kind of disagree with you, because I've never found those problems. I mean,
Well, you must have got somebody to, you know, I work.
but
How is my daughter gonna get over to?
the bottom line is that, and again, this comes directly from the softball coach, that the older kids drive the younger kids over there, and that's part of the problem. You're actually stating what the problem would be if we moved the softball field to the high school, because now the younger kids, the freshmen and the sophomores and the juniors, they're not going to have a way to get over to the little school. There's only one field at the high school. There's only one field.
I still think it would be nice to have a girls softball field, you know, they're part of the school. I don't know why they need to be isolated, you know, if they play just like the boys under the lights, and, you know, the feeling of going over to a different part of town as a high school student is not the same as it being right there at the school and enjoying all the activity and kids going over to watch you play. And I mean, you know, there's nowhere to watch you play over at the little school. You sit on a chair in the parking lot because you can't sit in the stands because it's all, you know, walled.
Well, that's a temporary
temporary, right.
situation. I mean,
But
that's
Jerry,
going
just-
to be corrected. But again, this issue was discussed at length, and a lot of information was taken into consideration on this before this decision.
And I would say just so you know, we didn't make that decision. We made a recommendation, taking input from, as Jerry said, the administration and also the coaches and at the school and the athletic director. The SSBC is the one that makes the final decision. Those meetings are open. So I appreciate your comments tonight, but we can't affect that change anyway. If there was to be a change, it has to be the
But so
SSBC.
there's no mistake. We did make a unanimous recommendation that they include
Correct.
the baseball field instead of the softball field there.
Right,
That did come from us, which came from the administration.
And I also,
The state who's funding this, how are they made aware of the changes? Because, I mean, people in town voted.
it was never designated as any kind of field when that project was approved.
It was kind of up in the air. But and again, I
says
don't know
field,
how old your
baseball
daughter
field.
is.
She's going in 4th grade.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean, she's got a while, but still,
Yeah.
by the time the high school's finished, she'll be moving right in. You know?
again, I've gone through the softball experience from
Yeah.
the 1st grade up to high school, and to be honest with you, the kids were. That's a very nice complex over at the little school. You'll find when you start traveling around to different cities and towns, there are very few complexes as nice as that one, and there are very, very few that can accommodate 3 teams at once. Sometimes when you're going in these fields in different locations, the bus is driving the varsity to one field, then driving all the way across town someplace else to drop off the junior varsity, then coming back to the varsity field when they have to pick that, and then going back and forth. It's really a very convenient and a very nice setup that we have at the little school. Now, that's not taking into consideration this wall problem, which is something recent and something that's going to be dealt with. But I can tell you from experience, having gone through it, I know you're at the 4th grade level, that complex is an excellent complex. And a lot of credit has to go to youth softball, because they're the ones that have put an awful lot into that complex to get it to where it is today.
So I guess at this point, you know, we hear your comments and your concerns. I would say that if you wanted to pursue this, you know, you should contact the administration at the high school and contact the SSBC at this point. We could reconsider it also, but I think at this point it
was a tough decision for me. I kind of put a hold on that, to be honest with you. I'm the one that forced the issue over here at the school committee to say, look, what does the administration want, before we made a recommendation, because I was in favor of a softball field as well. But after hearing from the administration, and particularly the high school softball coach, it was my feeling that the best recommendation, the best utilization of that particular field would be for baseball.
Can I just make a point?
Sure.
So when we did the vote, or to make a recommendation, it was a consensus. I did raise the issue at the time about whether parents had provided any input. And at the time, the answer was, we haven't heard anything to the contrary. But, and I understand why you're shaking your head, but we did make a recommendation. There is still, you know, some room for parents to voice, and this is an appropriate venue to do that. There is a perception of inequity. I understand that, you know, girls feel that they may be disadvantaged because they don't play here, and I played softball. They also have their own dedicated complex, which is unusual and very nice, and once we fix the wall, I think it's going to be good. But there are trade-offs to everything, and I do think that, you know, we have looked at this from many different angles, and we had to make some tough decisions about, you know, what we would do with that space. So there will be a field. It'll be a smaller baseball field at this point, right? It's like a practice field. It's not even a real field to really play games on. But I understand your concern, and I do think there are other avenues. But if you feel that there are other parents who have not had an opportunity to be heard, there is an opportunity for them to voice it at the SSBC meetings.
or with the administration or the athletic director. So
we don't really have much direction about you must use this field and what. Yeah.
Right. No, that's
No, it's important to hear.
Right.
I would bring that up just because I was really disappointed because, you know, kids love to play, you know, be at the school, feel like they're part. you know, and to have it be a practice field, it's kind of, to me, it's kind of a waste of really nice, good space. You
Right.
know, it's gonna be a brand new complex, it's a campus. And now, it's not like what it is now, it's gonna be a campus. And the girl, I just feel that they're gonna say, well, now we have to schlepp over to there and we could have been playing here. And I know there was a lot of that, even just at, some of the games during the summer, you know, people were talking about how great it was, because my daughter played in the summer league. And when we heard, you know, it was in the paper that they were talking about changing it, they were like, you know, there was a lot of disappointment. I don't think anybody really knows what to do about it as a parent, or who, that's why I'm kind of maybe getting some direction from you, so we should write to the.
I would either go to an SSBC meeting or I would contact the athletic director. I think contacting the athletic director is probably the best first step. If there's a bunch of parents that aren't happy about it, I mean.
Nobody knew anything about it, as far as I know, and, you know.
And again, I would ask you to think it through, though. Think of the things that we just talked about, okay? Because I know it's easy to jump to the conclusion, oh, we would like to have the field over there, but there are issues, and the people that you want to go to talk about these things are the people in charge of athletics, the athletic director, the coaches, the people that we talked to, and they made very strong recommendations. They weren't ambivalent about this at all.
Right.
And if you make that a softball field, you literally now have 4 softball fields, and you only have 2 baseball fields. And each sport has a freshman, junior varsity, and varsity team. And I'm telling you that that field at the high school would be almost exclusively used for the varsity team. And some people said, well, you could have the varsity one day and the junior. No, you can't. I mean, they practice every single day, or they have a game every single day. So essentially, the other 2 teams are going to be going to the little school no matter what.
Right.
And they won't have transportation because the older kids who have the ability to drive and who have always, for the last 14 years since they've been there, always transported the rest of the teammates to the little school. So your daughter, when she's a freshman or a sophomore, or, you know, depending on which team she's on, she's going to be going to the little school.
Right, but where have the boys, where are the freshmen and the JV boys practice?
They go to the Hood School.
The Hood School.
Play games.
Right, some go to the
And
Hood.
without this field, they literally would have the freshmen and the
They wouldn't have.
would have to all go to the Hood School or find another place to play, which we looked around. And we did try to find another, you know, field. We talked to Recreation. Well, you know, Recreation was committed to their fields, to what they already have there. So we had asked them to look at, or at least I had asked them to look at other possibilities for a baseball diamond. But
So again, I think Jerry's right, though, that your next step, if there are parents that are interested, I would contact the athletic director, and that's probably the best way to go.
Okay, and who is that?
Dave Johnson.
Dave Johnson.
One last question. Could you just make sure you give me your address again on where?
Sure, it's 10 School Hill Lane.
10 School Hill Lane. Okay.
Just
'Cause
look for the construction.
Okay, because I want to make sure that we have that for the SSBC. I want to make sure we have that.
Great. Well,
Okay.
Thank you very much
Thank
for
you.
your time. I appreciate
Thank you.
listening to me.
Thanks. Appreciate it. And Carl, this is actually probably a good time, since we're talking about softball and Little School Field, to give an update on the wall, not the Pink Floyd's wall, but the wall at the Little School.
Nice reference.
Yes, thank you.
Welcome.
Okay.
Well, as context, I think the school committee, of course, knows, as does the public, that the retaining wall that separates the little school parking lot and the little school building property is at risk. It's at peril. The building inspector has looked at the retaining wall, which is approximately 100 feet in length, and determined that there are some unsafe portions.
Isn't it? Excuse me. Isn't it 300 feet?
I said 100. I meant
300,
100
right?
yards or
100 or 300 feet.
300
Okay.
feet. Thank you,
that's
Mr.
got to be one or
Webster.
the other.
Yeah.
We should do metric and do meters,
Yes.
shouldn't we?
Meters. Yes.
So at the latter part of the varsity girls season this June, we had to rope off sections and made it a little more difficult for spectators because, as noted, spectators now must sit up on top of the parking lot, not in the bleachers. So a lot of efforts now going into looking forward and determining what we need to do in the future. It's time to fix this problem. So the school committee, I believe, voted to create a placeholder at the October town meeting in hopes that town meeting may support a repair to this important area. We have approached several landscape architects. We need at this stage to bring in a professional to assess that area. Once again, the building inspector, who has a lot to say about the future of that space, has stated that at this juncture it is imperative to have a stamped drawing which suggests a professional approach to the future and how that wall has to be reconstructed. So we have gone through several suggestions on landscape architects, and at this point we feel, as of this afternoon actually, we feel we have identified a landscape architect who is interested in working with us. This is a landscape architect that has been suggested by the DPW director, Richard Carnival, and he comes with his blessing, and that's important because we do want to approach this repair as a joint school and town project. The fields are used jointly by the school department and the Parks and Recreation Youth Softball Leagues. So we're prepared now to move ahead to engage the services of a landscape architect. I believe the committee has given us the direction that the costs of said design can be borne by the schools, and we've identified funds to do that. I've checked that out with the finance director for the appropriateness of it, and that's been blessed. At this stage, the landscape architect, while we have not developed the specs yet, nor have we gone out to bid, in his professional judgment, the cost will come in at very close to $100,000. As high as that number is, we've heard much higher numbers from other individuals who have looked at this.
I just heard a higher number from her.
Yeah, $2 million.
$2 million.
I said, oh my God.
No, this architect is confident that after the specs have been developed and have been examined by the powers to be in the community here in terms of our own professionals, that the bids will ultimately come in the $100,000 range. So the next steps, should town meeting deign to approve this, would be, well, let me back up. I think that I would like now the go-ahead to engage the services of a landscape architect. That would cost under $10,000, at which time we will have specifications that we can advertise. The goal would be to do this work before the ground freezes so that it is available for use this spring.
So at this point then, and I think there's a little more we need to talk about, but at this point I would entertain a motion to authorize the spending of up to $10,000 to have plans, stamped plans developed for repairs at the little school wall.
That's going to come out of our operating budget?
Out of our operating budget, yes.
No, sir. It would come out of our facility revolving
facility
fund.
revolving fund, okay.
And that's I am pleased that we've been able to generate a little bit of money there. The reason I think that's a good decision for the committee to make here is the facility revolving fund is not taxpayer supported. It is a fund that is generated by the use of fields and by the use of gymnasiums. In other words, user fees are the source of funds for the facility revolving fund. So I would state that it's appropriate to give back, so to speak, to those who use the fields, those who use the buildings, use their funds to make this improvement.
So then the motion would be to use $10,000 from the facilities revolving fund for the purpose of obtaining stamped plans for repair of the little school retaining wall.
I'll move to do so.
Second.
Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous? Then I think the other thing we wanted to talk about was there's been some confusion as to the genesis of the wall. And I don't know if the superintendent or Carl wants to address that also.
I would like to, Mr. Chair. I just want to talk a little bit about how we came to this point. Earlier, I should say in the late spring last year, it came to our attention that the retaining wall was failing. And so at an athletic subcommittee of the school committee, where we do have representation from Parks and Recreation as well as the athletic department, the school committee administration, we talked about a potential $30,000 project and hoping that it wouldn't be more than that. We were thinking, well, how can we share the burden of the cost between the town departments? So we had some conversation about that, and everybody seemed amenable. Also thinking about, since it was at the softball fields, could we even think about approaching the softball boosters? And then, of course, as time went on, it became apparent that this was not a small project, that this was now going to be a very costly project that would be more appropriate for a capital improvement project as opposed to town departments trying to come together and piece together the funding to make this small fix. It's not a small fix. It's a large fix. And that's when the school committee decided in their wisdom that we really needed to talk to the powers that be and get this on the warrant at the October town meeting for a capital improvement vote of the community. So that's how we moved from trying to collaborate with all of the town departments that were possibly involved in thinking about fixing this to now moving toward a town meeting vote. And so in the spirit of collaboration, nobody is to blame for this wall failure. We just want to make sure that we get it fixed. I want to thank the many volunteers that do countless hours in this community for the betterment of the community, and that includes all of the parents that volunteer as a booster parent, parents that work for Parks and Recreation, parents that volunteer for the school department. And at the end of the day, we all have the one same goal, and that's to provide a safe learning and a playing environment for our students. So, as Carl said, it's time to move forward so that we can get this wall fixed, so that we can again fully reinstate the use of those fields at the little school.
Questions or comments?
Well said.
I agree. Okay, thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next we have, I believe, school committee goals. We had a goal workshop 2 weeks ago, and we set our annual goals, and there's 4 categories. Many of the goals carry over from year to year because they're annual goals or activities, but there are some new activities, and I think those are the ones I'd want to highlight tonight. There are 4 categories. The first one is leadership and governance, and the goal statement is the North Reading School Committee demonstrates a keen understanding of the role of the school committee and works with the law and standards for within the law and standards for best practice, uses policy as a governance tool, and exercises due diligence in budget and finance. And the objective is to develop and implement district policies and practices that provide direction and tools for administrators to implement effective programs for student achievement, promote the inclusion of all students, and provide equal access to all programs and curriculum. Under this goal for activities falls policy, and we have a policy subcommittee, and they systematically review our policies on a more than monthly basis at times, and we update those. And we also have to develop policies that are required by state mandates. But the new goals that we've suggested are to research and review handheld devices, policies, and guidelines that we already have and determine whether and how we need to change those if we do. Second is to develop a social media policy, the use of social media by the district. And the third one is to evaluate the implementation of the bullying prevention and intervention policy. Take a look at how that's being implemented. What kind of success, results, etc. have we seen from that? Under strategic planning, we have approved the NRPS 2016, a plan for strategic continuous improvement. That's a new goal. Under evaluation, we have, and this was Ms. Arquetti's suggestion, and I think it's a good one, we've wholeheartedly bought into the self-evaluation process of the school committee, and Ms. Arquetti would like to present a school committee self-assessment workshop at the MASC-MASS conference in 2013. So I believe you're going to be working with the superintendent.
Abstract, but
yes,
we'll
but you'll
see
be working
if
with the
they take
superintendent
it.
to put that together. And I think that's great because I think anytime we can help out other school committees, I think we should try and do that. So also on the docket is the new NREA educator evaluation system, which will be implemented in next school year. And that's required by the state, and I'll be serving on that subcommittee along with Mrs. Willis, and then we will have several representatives from the teachers will be with us on that. And we also have to approve a superintendent's educator evaluation system, again, for next year, which is also required by the state. It's not saying what we're doing isn't right, but now we have to make our evaluation systems comply with what the state's telling us we have to comply with. So, also falling under that is communications. We didn't have any new other than to keep expanding our communications efforts, which I think the superintendent has done a wonderful job with her staff in reaching out to the community and making the community aware of what's going on at the schools. Human resources, we continue to explore adequate staffing, and also, as part of what we heard tonight, the presentation from Patrick, what staffing is necessary to carry out the increased data reporting. And I think that's something we really need to look closely at, as Ms. Arricchetti raised in her questions. Also under that is professional development. We talked about this last year. We did not achieve it. We need to create an orientation program for newly elected school committee members. And then the secondary school building project, we've moved that on to provide the leadership necessary for the completion of the secondary schools building project, such as providing informational presentations at the fall and spring town meetings, providing regular progress updates during school committee meetings, and supporting the work of the SSBC. So any questions or comments on those? Next, we have financial and asset management. The North Reading School Committee develops and approves a clear financial plan and uses the budget document as the roadmap for fiscal stability, strategic planning, program continuity, and student achievement. Our objective, develop a long-term plan and budget that provides adequate resources for teaching and learning and appropriate educational facilities. Under budget, we just changed the year. We're going to approve the FY14 budget to adequately meet district requirements for optimum student achievement within the restrictions of the overall town budget. The next point, the next bullet point for activities, and this was strongly recommended by Mike Kushakji. We had interesting discussion about it, and while we think it's a difficult thing to achieve, we think it's something we definitely should look at, and that's to update the 5-year budget vision to put a little more effort into what are some of the details on that budget vision, and maybe help us to plan for budgets further down the road. And then finally, working with the onus. This one I feel is very important. It's working with the onus project manager on the new school project to identify potential increased costs, operating costs, that we might have to add into the budget once the schools are completed. Our hope is that the costs will stay the same, that the increased costs will be offset by savings, whether it be energy or whatever the savings are.
I do think it'll be manageable. I mean, I'm not sure if it's going to be more or less, but it will be manageable.
And we saw at bringing the little Batchelder School online, which was practically a new school building.
Yeah, it was manageable.
Manageable. So we get a lot of efficiencies from the new buildings, and a lot of better ways to manage lights and heat and et cetera. Also, we will continue to work with the finance planning team on a regular basis, and that's the town administrator and other town boards and the town finance director, and develop a school budget supported by members of the finance planning team. Educational program, the goal statement is the school committee establishes an overall education plan and provides a framework and environment which supports the success of this plan. The objective is to support the administration in its efforts to improve student achievement. I think the one major change here, I don't know if I'm going to read all these, and this was at my urging, and I don't want to make our school committee meetings overly long, but I would like us as a committee to become more educated on the curriculum, the programs we're using in our schools, how they're working. NOADM, for example, the science program. I'm going to get this one wrong again. Foundations. Foundations, which is at the earlier grades. The superintendent is going to have more staff and administrators come in and make presentations to us on a fairly regular basis.
And all presentations will be breathtaking.
Yes, they'll be breathtakingly short. Yes, they'll be very efficient in their use of words. So that's really one of the big things. We also want to develop a better understanding of what kind of professional development is going on, and so we'll get presentations on that. And then instructional technology, which is important. We need to continue to work to implement adequate staffing. I think we've added someone this year, which is very important. Identify the resources we need to support the technology staffing, and then support the acquisition and implementation of additional technology. Then finally, we have family and community relations. The goal statement. The North Reading School Committee engages stakeholders and other citizens through open, transparent communication and opportunities for feedback, resulting in a positive image of the school district. Our objective is foster active partnerships with parents, community organizations, and businesses, which result in ongoing productive communication and support for education. And as I said a few minutes ago, I think the superintendent and her staff has done an incredible job over the last 2 years to increase the communications with parents and the rest of the community. We don't really have any new goals here. Although under community partnerships or activities, we do want to get a better understanding of the role of the school councils, which we'll work on this year. We'd like to have the representative from the Northeast Regional Vocational Technical High School come in and give us an update twice a year. I think we saw her last year, and we'd like to have her come in twice a year to give us an update. And then we talked about earlier the high school maybe having, or not maybe, but having presentations about the middle school and high school project at town meetings. And then the superintendent is going to work to cultivate relationships with local businesses and organizations through the North Reading Chamber of Commerce. So that in a nutshell are our goals for this year. And if there's any comments or questions?
No, I'd just say that over the last 12 months, and it's credit to the administration in particular, but we accomplished some pretty impressive things, and that was obviously the school building project with the help of a lot of people, the secondary school building committee and the public in general to get the school project passed. We were able to pass a level services budget at a time when, in last January, it looked like we were going to be at least $1 million in the hole. And I think to be able to negotiate all of our contracts, get them done quickly, including the teacher's contract. So I think we accomplished a lot over the last 12 months.
Yeah,
it's good to have ambitious goals because it makes us focus a little bit more.
I agree. I think there's a great deal of cooperation and teamwork in this district. I saw it. It was really illustrated to me in the negotiations with the teachers, their ability or their willingness to work with us. They wanted to get the contract done as quickly as we did. They didn't want it to drag on. We had very good negotiating sessions, and
it was the best negotiating sessions that since I've been here that I've experienced. That's for sure.
Right, and they wanted to come to the table as much as we did. They were demanding as many meetings, if not more, than we were demanding, and it was really nice to see that. And I think Mr. Venezia is right. With the school project going on in the background, which is a huge project in itself, we've had a lot of things going on. For example, like what Patrick presented tonight, like the new evaluation systems for both the teachers and the superintendents, and all of those things are going on simultaneously. Also implementing new programs in the within the curriculum, and adapting the core curriculum, the new core curriculum, which we're required to do. So, and we also got the boys baseball. We got the baseball team to win the state championship.
Yes,
and we take complete credit for that.
The lacrosse team to get
and the lacrosse team got to the state finals. Exactly. All those I think go on our ledger for this year.
I think it's really. I don't want to pat us on the back because I think this is a team effort, and here our committee actually has something very unique, that we actually are focused on goals. We create them and we actually look at them, and we have some momentum. I think the school project gave us kind of the momentum we needed to achieve other goals because it gave us the backdrop of movement, which really helped us, but also having a more streamlined evaluation system. We actually look at what we do, and we actually care about getting results, not just, for the district, but for this committee to be the most effective committee we can be. And I anecdotally met another committee member from outside this district who said that this is an enviable committee because we are able to achieve this sort of weird teamwork, despite the fact that we're all very different, and that this needs to be replicated. And I'm like, I don't know what the magic ingredient is in that system, but it works, and whatever we're doing, I don't want to change.
I think it goes beyond that too. I think that the school project's an unbelievable example of the collaborative effort amongst all of the town departments.
Exactly.
I mean, when you go
it's very
to,
magical
and Mel
too.
knows, the finance planning team meetings, and you sit down face to face with the the chairman, the vice chairman from the board of selectmen, from the finance committee, and the different department heads. It's at that point it's a little hard to be. Not to be talking about people. I mean, you got to face them and you've got to work out the problems, and we've been able to do that. I mean, we've had a great relationship, and it was really apparent on the budget discussions, but also on the building project. I mean, when you sit down at a secondary school building committee meeting, you see the representative from the finance committee and from the board of selectmen and from the school department. It's really a collaborative effort. And that's the way things get done. You know,
Yeah.
there's no stalemates. I mean, we work issues out and you get things done.
It's clear we're earning our salary. No question about that.
Big debate.
Lucrative
Yeah.
salary.
But some city
City of Everett,
15,000
15 or 25,000 for their city council.
for the city
What?
council members.
In Everett, they're debating whether to pay their city councilors 15,000 or 25,000.
Really?
They have a new system, a
pay
new
for
government,
school.
form of government coming in. Okay,
That's too funny. All right.
next we have the,
Do you have to vote?
oh, I guess we have to vote to accept our goals.
Do we?
Motion to
did last
accept
year.
our 2012, 2013 goals.
So moved.
Second.
Further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Okay, next, North Reading Public Schools 2016, a plan for strategic continuous improvement.
Okay. Over the course of last year, I had spent some time presenting to you the work that was being done behind the scenes by the Administrative Council. And it was all based on a book called Strategy in Action. And this book is written by two individuals, Rachel Curtis and Elizabeth City. And so over the course of the last year and a half, the Administrative Council and the expanded leadership team that includes all of our assistants worked on identifying what are those few strategic drivers that will give us the biggest, I want to say, bang for our buck, for lack of a better term. And if we implement it well, will help us move this district forward in terms of improvement around student achievement. And this is all focused on, if you recall the presentation that I made to you, it's focused on the instructional core. What are we doing in terms of our educators? What are we doing in terms of our teachers in the presence of content? And that content has to do with what Mr. Webster already mentioned, which is known as the Common Core or our curriculum frameworks. So over the course of the last 16 months, we've been taking a look at what has this district focused on. And we discovered that there was something like 63 different initiatives that were taking place. And we know that when we take on too many things, we can't do any of them well. So the real focus for us was to narrow. And what we ended up with was identifying 3 essential major strategies that this district will continue to focus on. And those strategies have to do with teaching and learning, student services, and technology integration. But I need to back up a little bit. I want to orient you to the plan that's in front of you. And the purpose of this tonight, this presentation tonight, is just to provide an overview to this continuous improvement plan. I'm going to ask that the committee take away the plan this evening, have an opportunity to look it over, and then at a future school committee meeting, I believe it's September 10th, would have a more in-depth conversation about what's actually included in this plan. And I'd be very interested in your comments, questions, and concerns. On the opening day, I will be rolling this out to the staff. I will be emailing a copy of it to everyone in this district, and I'm going to be asking them to be doing the same thing over the month of September and providing feedback to the Administrative Council for us to review and incorporate where we feel it's appropriate. And then by October 1st, this would be an official document that would then be shared with the public. It would be uploaded to our website. It would be referenced at all of our future school committee meetings, because this will be the focus of the work that's taking place on the instructional core in this district. So what you see in this packet in front of you is an executive summary that details how did we get to this point. It also talks about the school and district community profiles. So we talk a little bit about what is North Reading, what makes up this particular town, and a little bit of history on each of the schools, concluding with that overwhelming vote on March 24th that really established our new complex that's being created. It includes the updated vision and the mission that you voted last year. And actually, it's a new vision and an updated mission. And then we have continuous improvement plan district goals that were created on page 6. And there are 8 of them. They are very broad goals that address some of the big picture areas that we're going to focus our work on over the course of next year. You're going to see an annotation after them in parentheses. And in order for this educator evaluation system to be tied to this continuous improvement plan, we need to have district goals that the teachers will refer back to. So every goal that they write is also connected to where we want this district to go. That's also the case for administrators. So after each goal, you're going to see an annotation that's either S or T. If it's S, it's A or T. The S stands for the standard. There are 4 standards in the new educator as well as the new administrator evaluation system. So for example, after number 1 it says S1A. That's standard 1 for the administrators. It also says S1T. That's standard 1 for the teachers. So both administrators and teachers can refer back to each goal and identify which standards in the new educator evaluation system this goal responds to. So we want to make sure that this is a document that's going to be useful for all of us as we are doing our jobs and moving this district forward. And then you'll see that each of the major strategies are identified. For example, on page 7, teaching and learning strategy for continuous improvement. And then a theory of action was developed for each of those strategies. I presented that to you last year. And the theory of action is the connection between the strategy and the vision. It's an if-then statement. That connects the particular strategy with the objective and all the activities under that objective that will move us toward meeting our goals. So each major strategy has a set of objectives, and under each of those objectives are a set of activities that are time-bound within a 3 to 5 year period. And then you can see it's laid out very much like a strategic plan with your strategic initiatives, who's going to be doing the work, what's the timeline, the resources, what's the outcome, and then some comments where appropriate. So that's the way that this document is structured. So again, I mentioned teaching and learning strategy. Then you move forward in the document and you'll come to the student services strategy for continuous improvement. This really takes a look at what are those programs and practices that we have in place that support our students, whether they're high achieving or whether they're significantly challenged. And what are we going to do to move all students to achieving their highest potential? And then that third strategy is the technology integration. We didn't simply say instructional technology, because we could have all the latest technology in the world, but if we don't know how to use it to maximize the learning opportunities for our students, then it's useless hardware. So it's about how we integrate technology as a teaching tool into the learning for our students. And again, that's a multiple year strategy design. And then it's very important for us to have evaluation metrics to know how is all of this work moving us toward achieving our goal. So toward the end, on page 29, you'll see a placeholder in here around progress and performance index. This is what Patrick spoke about this evening. So in this area, you'll see a description of what is the PPI, who are the student groups that are going to be used in that calculations, how are schools and districts going to be classified, and what kind of improvement planning needs to take place based on those classifications. And then how are we going to get this information out to parents? How are we going to communicate to them the work that's being done in this district based on these metrics? So when the embargoed data is available as official data to the public, you're going to see additional tables added to this particular document that really outlines the trajectory of improvement over the next 5 years. This is the PPI that we need to achieve in the aggregate in 2014-15. This is the PPI that we need to achieve for the high needs group. This is the PPI that we need to achieve for our students with disabilities, for our low income students. That will all be broken down by tables, so we can actually take a look at where we need to be in each of the next 5 years and then compare the actual data when we receive our reports annually from the state as to whether or not we've achieved those goals. Now that's one measurement. That's not the only measurement. But right now that's a very objective measurement in determining whether all this work is moving us in that direction of continuous improvement. That's a brief overview.
So clearly there's a lot of reading for us to do. We also need to vote to approve this, I'm guessing.
But I'm going to ask that we do that after we get feedback from you
Correct.
and from our other constituent groups.
But this essentially replaces the long-standing strategic plan that's probably 15 years old,
At
Jerry?
least 15, yeah, I'd say it goes back to probably 99.
99,
So
2000.
13, okay,
2000.
so 13 years old.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. It's good to go through this process every 7 years. That's what they say the life of a strategic plan is.
Well, and I know with that strategic plan, we were constantly reviewing it and
Yes, you
updating
were.
it, adding things to it. But it is time for a new vision and a new strategic improvement plan, continuous improvement plan. So we will review this, talk about it at the meeting on the 10th. Will we vote the 10th, or you wait for us to vote a later meeting?
I'm going to ask that you wait for the first meeting in October.
Okay.
By that time, we'll have collected data from all of our faculty and staff.
Okay.
Did I hear you ask also for feedback about how to report this out in a meaningful way? I'm sorry, I just want to make sure I understand my homework.
Sure, sure. All feedback is welcome. There is a line in there that talks about outcomes. So any feedback or suggestions that you'd like to provide regarding outcomes would be very helpful.
Sure.
And as we think about multiple measures, again, we know that no one assessment gives you a true picture of success. It requires multiple measures in order to achieve that evaluation of making progress toward meeting our goals.
Sure.
So, and that's also required by the DESE under the new educator evaluation system. So we'll have some local assessments, we'll have this state assessment, we'll be identifying some formative as well as summative assessments. So we will be having multiple measures, and I'll be able to report back to you on the future regarding that.
That's great. Sounds
Any other
good.
comments or questions? Okay. At this time, I need to leave, and seeing that the vice chairman is not here, and the closest person next to me is Mrs. Ericetti,
All right.
I'm going to actually turn the conclusion. Carl, no insult to you. I know the budget report's coming up. I'm sorry, Carl. Mr. Direct,
I
Mr.
will text him
Dofo,
all
I'm
of the
sorry,
details.
but so at this point, I'll let Ms. Ericetti
Great.
run the rest of the meeting, and I have to get out of here. So good night.
Safe drive.
Thanks.
All right, we turn to our fiscal year 2011 end of year financial report. Mr. Nelson,
Thank you, Madam Chair.
for 10 minutes. Awesome.
I believe in your packet there is an audit report that summarizes the fiscal 2011 year. This is the annual report that is very detailed and all-encompassing. A audit team chosen by the Board of Selectmen, by the way, come in and look through procedures, financial policies, personnel policies, as well as a tremendous amount of detail relating to our financial reporting, which serves as the basis for a lot of the information you see on the DART website in terms of how much money we spend on regular education and special education and athletics and administration, etc. It also yields the per pupil spending data that is so important to look at. Interestingly enough, as the audit team was here, I was becoming optimistic about, for the first time, having a 100% perfect audit. They had told me several times in the process that they had found nothing, and they were poised to give us a A++. It turns out that they visited several more times and did come up with one finding that relates to an expenditure that was put on the wrong row in the report. It distinguishes pre-K spending, pre-kindergarten spending, from kindergarten spending. So it was placed on the wrong row in the end of the year report. It's since been corrected, and there are no implications from that error. But I also, Madam Chair, it gives me an opportunity to really express appreciation to the business office staff for hardworking, very capable, competent people who really serve as the backbone and infrastructure for our financial reporting, because they do the accounting and bookkeeping work every day. And the really outstanding audit reports that we've received in recent years is really a testimony to their work. So I'd like to publicly thank them. And that is my report.
Great. Only one finding, so that meant that it was A+ and not A++.
I'm afraid so.
That is a tragedy. Thank you so much. Any comments, questions from the committee?
I'd also like to commend Carl Nelson for his work as the Director of Finance and Operation, also known as the DOFO, because without his leadership of the business office, we would not receive this kind of a finding. This is really, truly amazing and unusual that there is such a minor finding in this audit process. So, again, thank you, Carl.
It really is unusual.
I take a little exception. It's amazing and unusual. I think we get it pretty much every time they do an audit, right, from Cal. So,
Well, that's true. That's true.
It's always been pretty good.
That's true. In other districts,
And
it's
I do
unusual.
think sometimes they go back and they will find something, so that just shows they were looking at everything too. Sometimes when they make
You wonder.
So
That's it.
That is true.
Thank you.
Great work. All right. Routine matters. Bills and payrolls all done?
I think there's three.
Yes.
We done? Okay, great. No minutes?
No.
Budget update. Mr. Nelson?
Yes, thank you. There's a notation there that we would describe the two capital improvements. I think we have discussed the little school wall, and I believe you've taken action on that. The second capital plan that the school committee had approved for inclusion in the October town meeting warrant has to do with parking lot, an expanded parking lot at the Batchelder School. And at this time, working with Kathy, we're poised to move ahead and have this project worked on. The good news is that as a result of an opinion by the Director of Finance for the town, the funds for such a project can be secured from leftover funds from the Batchelder School project. So I think it's fair to say at this juncture that the school committee, probably just prior to town meeting, can vote to pass over this warrant article because it does not really relate to town meeting at this stage.
How much money, Cal? I thought it was a relatively small amount of money that was left over.
30,000.
25,000. Okay,
Yes.
I thought it was 25, but okay, it's
Yeah,
30,000.
it's in the high 20s, and while we don't have a definitive amount yet for the cost of this parking lot, we know it'll be well within that number.
Really?
It's really good news.
Yeah, so I think it's also fair to say, in a discussion with Principal Sean Colleen today, he's in the very early stage of identifying another project he'd like the committee to consider into the future, that being that the original Batchelder School, the windows in the original building are the original windows. So reports Sean, and there are some concerns about how long those original windows are going to be able to open and close and whether they fall on people's fingers. So I think that the school administration is going to look into something for the future to look at those windows and put some airtight, more modern windows there. I only mention that to give the committee a heads up that may be coming in the future. The most important thing for this parking lot now is for us to begin a communication process and to engage those who are most impacted by the site that we're considering, that being across the access road from the present Batch parking lot. So we don't really want to get, it's probably inappropriate or premature to go into a lot of detail now, because we feel appropriate to discuss this with all of the stakeholders in that area, and Kathy intends to, I think, take the lead on that. But I thought it was appropriate for us to share where we stand in this project now and entertain any questions.
Cal, when you say across the access road, over towards the baseball field area there?
Yes.
And I'm throwing this out because I know Wayne is the person and, you know, everybody else that works on this. But, you know, I went down there and took a look at the current Batchelder field there. And it seems to me that there's plenty of room to be able to put almost an identical come in and come out like the parking lot that's already there, just below the one that's there coming down towards Park Street. But I'm just throwing it out. I'm not suggesting this is the best idea because there's probably some logistical concerns. And it would still leave a considerable amount of play area or green area after you did that. And it just looked like it would work just to the naked eye when you went down there and took a look at it. So I don't know if anyone's considering that or not.
I think we need to consider everything.
We are going to consider everything. Again, this is in the historic district, but we are taking a look at what all of our options are.
Across the street there, I mean, I could see what you're saying, but there are some problems there too. You know,
Yes.
people crossing over and traffic and coming in and out of that lot. Whereas I think if you look at it again, it seems like you could make a nice clean swing in, line it with parking spaces and come around and come back out again without a huge problem.
So you're referring, in effect, to just expanding the present parking lot out towards Park Street
I'm
by
saying
another road?
almost take and duplicate it.
Yeah.
If you look at it, again, I was surprised when I went down there, but if you were to duplicate what you actually
what you're
have there
saying,
now,
yeah.
you could almost do the same.
Will that give you enough parking spots?
I think it would add another
Well, it
20 or 30 spots if you.
can
if
be
you
what
did
you
that.
want it to be. Principal Colleen has said that 40 parking spots would be his optimum number. The space across the street would yield about 20. But I think we need to explore every option. There are pluses and minuses to every option as well. You know, right now, as you know, there's a berm between the parking lot where there are some trees planted as a visual barrier and as kind of a.
But I don't even think it would impact that berm. I don't know. It's just something that just take a look at it.
Okay. Thank you.
So just to clarify, the next step is really the planning and communication strategy because of where this is, and we need to engage the Historic Commission folks.
That's
Have they
correct.
been brought into this yet?
Not
or
at this
we're
particular time. There are a couple of other departments in town that we'd like to touch base with and get some of their expertise on before we move forward with an official contact to the HDC.
Great. Any other questions or comments? Okay, great. Staffing? Ms.
Yes.
Ms. Willis.
In your packet, there is another update to the staffing report that I provided to you in July. We have filled most of the TBAs that had been included. There were some last-minute resignations or leaves of absences that were requested. So we've been doing an awful lot of hiring in the last week or two. But I can tell you that at this particular time, we have one faculty member that still needs to be hired and 2 paraprofessionals. And I know there are interviews taking place tomorrow, and there were some taking place today. So overall, we have we have 16 new faculty members that are being hired and 6 leaves of absences being filled. And then in terms of central office, we have our technology technician and a special education chairperson. We also have a new custodian at the middle school. And then in terms of paraprofessionals, we have 4 new paraprofessionals that are being hired. So we have a few more faculty and staff than we did last summer. But we're in a pretty good position right now to open the school year. I believe that all of the positions will be filled.
That was my question. Any other questions? Comments? Great. Moving right along. Bids and donations. So we do have one donation that needs recognition. I'm sorry, I'm looking at the wrong page. So we received a $25 donation. Do I have the right letter?
Yes.
Yep. Wonderful. From Ms. Patricia McLeod to the Little School Library in memory of Lois Olive Burns. Is that somebody significant? That
She was an educator.
she was an educator. That's
Yes.
great. Wonderful. Everybody has a copy of the letter. Any other details that you can provide?
No, at this particular time.
Okay. Great. So I'll entertain a motion to accept the donation with gratitude.
So moved.
Second.
Great. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Unanimous? Great. And informational subcommittee updates. So we have a couple of meetings we need to schedule. What's left?
I'm hoping that we will be able to do that via email. I'll be happy to facilitate that with the various subcommittee members.
Okay, great. Administrative report?
Yes, that has been distributed to you. I'll do a very quick walkthrough. I've included in the administrative report my welcome back letter to faculty and staff. There is the school committee meeting schedule that has been updated to include recommendations from the principals regarding future school committee meetings that are held at their schools. So you can see that the Batchelder School is requesting to be the featured school on November 19th. The high school is asking to be featured on December 17th, the middle school on January 28th, the Hood School on February 11th, and the little school on March 4th. So if that's okay with you, we'll move this forward and get it posted to the website and, again, get this information out to NORCAM and into the transcript and into the patch.
Wonderful.
Okay. A copy of the schedule for the new faculty orientation is also included in your packet. That's taking place this week on Wednesday and Thursday. A copy of an email that was sent from Senator Tarr's office to members of the Community Impact Team on which I serve outlined the award of $50,000 as a child safety grant to the town of North Reading. So this is pretty amazing. We're very happy about this. And this money will provide very important resources to fulfill the mission of the Community Impact Team.
That's wonderful.
Very, very excited.
I'm guessing probably Representative Jones had something to do with that.
And Representative Jones had an awful lot to do with that as well, yes, so thank you. I would be remiss if I did not note that, because Senator Tarr and Representative Jones have been very supportive of the work of the CIT. Thank you, Mr. Venezia. What I also included in your packet was a new charter school prospectus. At the end of July, the Commissioner's Office sent out a memo to superintendents that identified new 2012-13 charter school proposals. And I point this out to you because there is a charter school that has submitted a proposal that includes North Reading as one of the feeder towns. So if you take a look at the memo, that third paragraph down talks about on November 7th, those prospectuses that would be moved forward will be invited to submit a full application, and then final applications will be approved on February 26, 2013. So this is just an FYI. It's the first time since I've been in North Reading that I've received this kind of a memo, and I'll keep you updated with what happens should this proposal move forward. And finally, in your packet is the schedule of the 2012 MCAS and Accountability Data Review and Release schedule. And I just want to bring your attention to the second page. In early September, the state-level official MCAS and MCAS alt results will be released to the public. That's the state level. And around the 18th of September, we'll receive reports that will be mailed out to parents and guardians. And in mid-September, the official district and school MCAS results will be released to the public. They will not be embargoed any longer. And at the same time, the PPI reports that you heard about tonight will also be released. So that's the information.
That's great. Any questions, concerns? Moving right along, we have upcoming scheduled meetings. Our next meeting is September 10th, which is a Monday at 7 p.m. held here. Assuming we'll enter through the front door, since we have a nice, lovely parking lot to look forward to driving through.
That is correct.
And getting lost in, which is great. And with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Unanimous. Good night.